Hi, this is DIY Just from DIYNexus. Today I'm going to disassemble, clean, inspect, lube, and reassemble a Pittsburgh Professional 1/4-inch drive low profile ratchet from Harbor Freight, their item number 62329. It's a polished 72 tooth ratchet with a comfort grip handle. These are generally made in Taiwan, and despite being a budget tool, they offer a lifetime warranty. So the reason we're doing this today is this one doesn't work quite right for me. This handle's really tight and it sticks in the middle. It doesn't flip left to right like you'd expect, and it sticks in the middle. And when it sticks in the middle, of course, it goes both directions, so it doesn't ratchet very well. Now you'd say, well, this is a Harbor Freight tool. You can just bring it back. You just told me that it has a lifetime warranty. But maybe you're not close to a Harbor Freight, or you just don't want to take stuff back and get it thrown into the garbage. So I'm a big fan of learning what's inside and checking it out and seeing if we can fix it. So hopefully this helps some of you out there. First thing we have to do is disassemble it. Here are the tools we're going to need for the disassembly. These will be listed below in the description, and if you purchase anything through the links, you'll help support us, and we appreciate it. First item we need is a T8 Torx driver. We'll also need some Loctite. I'm using number 242. It's the blue stuff, so it is removable. We'll need some cleaners. In this case I'm using Brake Clean. I just have a couple different ones here. Pretty much anything you have will work. This is Super Lube synthetic grease. There's a lot of discussion about lubricant on the internet. Some people prefer thicker and some prefer thinner. Thicker stuff would be like your wheel bearing grease, and thinner stuff would be like Marvel Mystery Oil, automatic transmission fluid, or even white lithium grease. I prefer this consistency because unlike the thinner lubes, it won't leak out over time. We're also going to use a pair of tweezers and a Q-tip. Disassembly begins by taking out the T8 screws that you see in the front here. There are 3. The outer 2 hold this main plate on, and the center one actually goes through and attaches the selector switch. And this one, the selector switch, does not work very good, but what we can see when I turn it is that the screw moves as well. Hopefully you can see that. So I would suggest we take out the outer 2 first. Now when we take out the center one, be aware that the selector switch could pop out, so I'm holding it in from the back. Actually, this is slightly different. This has a shoulder on it, this bolt, versus these, which are just countersunk. So keep that in mind for reassembly. Now I'm still holding the back in here. I'm just going to use the end of my T8 driver to pop the plate out. And finally we have the insides of the ratchet visible. I like to turn the selector switch to the middle, which I'm trying to get close here. If you turn it to the middle, it disengages both pawls. The pawls are the pieces with the L and the R on them. And that allows you then to just take the centerpiece right out. I took a little bit of a risk when I chose to do a 1/4-inch drive ratchet on a video here, because all the parts that are inside are very small. Consider that my finger is normal size here and the pieces are much smaller than it. So what I'm going to use is a set of tweezers to try to carefully pull out this little spring. If you push the center out or pull other things out without doing it carefully, they may spring all over the room. So I got the spring out on the left pawl. Now I'll grab the left pawl and take it straight up and out. I'll take the spring out on the right pawl. And then set the right pawl down as well. The last thing here is the selector switch, and it should just fall straight out the bottom. Now it's time to clean all the parts, and we'll be back when they're done. Now that all the parts are clean, we're going to want to inspect them all. We'll start with the main handle. In the case of this, you want to look inside the case here and see if there's anything damaged, any large burrs or very worn areas that the components are going to wear against and cause problems. In this case, it looks good. Also of note, when you clean this, you're going to want to clean inside these little holes where the screws thread, and perhaps use some compressed air, or just be sure that they're dried out completely when you're done, because we're going to want to put thread locker on them later, and if there's cleaner left in there or even some grease, the thread locker won't hold. This piece, we want to check for any kind of damage on these teeth. See if there are any missing or rounded. We also want to check to make sure that the anvil here is in good shape and that this little ball works properly. Not real easy to do on these 1/4 inch ones, but you want to push it, make sure it goes in and out. Check the plate for straightness and to see if there are any burrs or anything crazy going on. It looks good. The pawls, you want to look at the teeth to see if they're smooth and still sharp. This is what engages the other piece there to make the ratchet work. And there's an R and an L to tell you which side they go on. Little springs, pretty much, if they're here, they're good. If for some reason they seem like they're totally compressed, you could stretch them out just a little bit, but these seem to be fine. The selector switch. See that it's intact, nothing bent or burrs on, especially this area here, because this area is where those two pawls slide. Looks good. Also, you want to make sure that the hole is clean and dry on this one, because there's going to be some Loctite in that. And lastly, the screws. You can see the remnants of the old Loctite, not a lot on there. And they all seem good. If there's anything wrong with any of these parts, your best bet is just to take it back to Harbor Freight and get it replaced. They don't actually make a repair kit for this unit. Now we'll lubricate these items. I like to start with this, because one thing that gets often overlooked is lubrication of this little ball. If you let it be dry, over time it'll get stuck and then sockets won't go on or off correctly. So what I like to do is take some kind of penetrating lube and just spray it right into the ball there, let it get down in, and hope that I don't spray it on the camera lens. There we go. And then work it in and out. And when you're sure some got in there, just wipe it down. And that part's done. Now we want to use regular lube, which in this case we talked about we're going to use super lube, to actually get the rest of this piece. So we'll go along the back. Actually, the original lube had filled in that little divot, so I'm going to leave it filled in as well. And get the teeth. And you don't want to put a ton on here, because too much will actually impede the engagement of those little pawls and make it not work as well. And in this case, this ratchet never had any lube at all on the top when I opened it, so we're going to put some on. Again, with the 1/4 inch drive, it's tiny stuff to work on here. Okay. On the plate, you want to do the entire back. You can actually see wear marks where this had previously worn because it was dry. So you want to do the entire back. And you also want to get in the center hole, because as we showed at the beginning, it actually, that screw spins when you flip the selector switch. And in the main center hole here. Okay. pawls. Selector switch, we want to be very cognizant of not putting lube into that hole. So go around this triangular piece in the middle. Just be careful not to get it in the center. If you do, go ahead and clean it back out and then start it up again. I'm even getting it on the back of the switch and around the base, but just not in that center. Screws I wouldn't touch. Because this is so small, I'm going to apply the lube with a Q-tip, in this case, to this part, because we want to avoid getting it into these two holes, as that's where the screws are going to go with the Loctite. You also want to get it on the sides, on the left and the right, where the pawls actually contact, but not in those holes, so it's quite tricky. And in the bottom here. Lastly, turn it over, go where the switch is, and in the switch hole. And it should be good. On to reassembly. It's going to be the reverse of the disassembly. So we're going to put the selector switch in first from the back. I'm holding it in with my index finger of my right hand in this case. Then we're going to do the pawls. I think I will do the right side first. Or try to. Alright, now it's time for the tweezers and a spring. Hopefully this does not... I'll try it with my fingers. Oh wow, I got lucky on the first try. So that's what that should look like. Now I'm going to flip the switch and go to the left side. You're compressing the spring between the side of the ratchet and the little pawl itself. I got lucky on the first one. There we go. Wasn't too easy, but I got it. Now, like we did at the beginning, I'm setting the selector switch in the middle. I'm going to take this piece and set it right down in there. Now that it's installed, you can test that the operation works in both directions. To do this, you have to make sure your finger on the back is pushing right in the middle of the selector switch. So I have it on one direction now. And flip it, hold it in the middle. And it works. Last piece is the plate, but I notice when I pick it up that there's too much grease in that center hole, so that will end up getting pushed down into the hole and mess up my Loctite. I'm going to use the Q-tip to pull some of it out. That's better. Now I'll put it on. Same side down as originally came off. Now we're going to reinstall the screws. I like to do the outer two first, and those are the two that don't have the shoulder on them. In this case, we're going to put a little bit of Loctite on them. And you don't need to use a ton of this stuff, but you do want to coat the threads. can snug these up pretty tightly. But the third screw, which is the last one, takes a setting. So we'll put some Loctite on this one. And this one you don't want to snug down tight. What I like to do, check the switch here. It's still a little bit tight, even after all the lube. I like to bring it down to where it's the tightest point in the swing and actually loosen it up a little bit. And see, that's better. Maybe a little bit snugger than that. And just check it. You don't want it to reverse on you automatically as you're using it, but you also don't want it to be so tight that you can't do it with one hand, if necessary. A little bit more. That's it. Now it doesn't have a tendency, or as much of a tendency, to stick in the middle, although this ratchet isn't the most precision device. So we'll test it out. Actually works pretty well. We'll give this a good cleaning and we'll come back. Now that this is done, it works a lot better. The selector switch doesn't stick as much, goes back and forth pretty good, and it feels really smooth. It's much better than when there was no lube in the front side. We're done. With proper maintenance, these will last you a long time. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And if you liked what you saw, give us a thumbs up and subscribe. Thanks. Now we can take the selector switch out. I'm just pushing it gently out the bottom. It just exploded into a million pieces. Okay. I lost a spring.
I could have sworn I saw it go that way.
Here it is. That's not going to work. Gonna have to redo that. Don't want to teach people bad stuff.